Hello and welcome to VHawks Podcast. I'm Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by Matt, and we're gonna break down the just heartbreaking and heart attack inducing uh week that was week 17 or week 16, and then we're gonna predict week 17. We're almost there. We're almost in the home stretch. But first, here's about the state of my Vikings right now.
I was born with glass bones and paper skin. Every morning I break my legs, and every afternoon I break my arms. At night, I lie awake in agony until my heart attacks put me to sleep. Oh, no! Stop!
Wait,
Ow!
the sound you
Yep.
just heard is another Vikings player getting injured.
Pretty much. We lost DJ Wanham, who is our second best edge rusher, to a torn quad during the Lions game, and we also lost TJ Hawkinson to a torn MCL and ACL
Yeah, that was bad.
in the Lions game. Jordan Addison was also hurt during the first quarter, and we didn't even realize it, and then he just didn't return to the game with an ankle. He is day to day, as our coach puts it. Makai Blackman, one of our rookie cornerbacks, who's been seeing a lot of action lately because of other injuries to our cornerback room, also left that game with a shoulder after giving up a 30-yard completion because he was on the ground, clutching his shoulder instead of covering the receiver, because he was in that much pain. Was at least upgraded to limited today, so potentially some good news there. But basically, the NFL script writers really hate the Vikings because they just want to see all of our roster just get cut in, like, literally, not actually cut in, practice or off the team, but actually, like, they want to just cut them with knives and sharp objects, just take them all out of the game physically. And so at some point, we have to just not be competitive anymore because we just don't have enough firepower. So if Addison doesn't play, TJ Hawkins is already out for the year. If Addison doesn't play, JJ can't do it all himself. So think we're done. I'm just hoping Hawkinson's injury doesn't carry into next season. At least if it does, not too long. And we can stay healthy next year. But I mean, whether we make it this year or not doesn't really matter because we're not going to go far with this injured, beat up roster. Um, but at this point, I'm just glad that the Vikings are finally going to start Jaron Hall because he's the rookie we drafted in the 5th round. And for some reason, he has just had to climb through every single barrier to be able to get the start now instead of before after Dobbs started crapping the bed. And I've been clamoring for him to start for weeks. Personally, I think ever since halftime at the Bears game, he should have been brought in. Um, and who knows, we would have been 2 or 3 wins better, most likely, without turnovers. If you just tell the rookie, hey, throw safe balls, like might be all we need. But I mean, honestly, I don't care if Jaron Hall is great. I don't care if he sucks. Obviously, I'd love for him to be great. I'd love for him to win us these next 2 games and us to sneak in and possibly cause some damage in the playoffs, shock some people because there's not much film on Jaron Hall. But if he sucks, we at least know who we have in the room, and it's better than sticking with turnover machines and Dobbs and Mullins. And honestly, there's the kicker. The worst Jaron Hall can be is a turnover machine, which is the exact same thing you have in your other 2 quarterbacks. So my point has always been, why not see what you have in the rookie? Because you know what you have in the other 2 quarterbacks. So Kevin O'Connell finally getting some brain cells together and putting this guy in. And that's the only insult I'm going to make to Kevin O'Connell this video, because for the first time this season, other than the Niners game, this is the first game Kevin O'Connell actually called a good game, other than not benching Nick Mullins. The game plan was terrific, even with losing Addison in the first quarter and then losing Hawkinson at the beginning of the second half. The game plan, we went to next man up. he didn't have Mullins back up and stay scared. He told him to keep firing, and we found some touchdowns later. We got back into it. We kept it close. Nick Mullins just threw a ball away, basically to end the game. And I don't know what made him throw the pass. We still had time left. Could have just thrown it away if he was feeling the pressure. So don't know what happened there, but we were close with a Lions team that's very, very good. Congrats to them for winning the division for the first time ever. I don't know how many division wins the Buccaneers have in what was the North before the North. But maybe they'll eventually catch them in wins. But kudos to the Lions, and that means I got my division pick right for the NFC North. Not how I wanted to come for it from injuries on my side, but definitely you know, if it can't be us, I'd rather it be the Lions because I don't like the Packers not at all, and I don't like the Bears either. So don't really have too much against the Lions other than that they hurt my players this week. But you can't really put DJ Wanhams on them. You could put TJ Hawkinson's on Kirby Joseph, but I don't really think that it was his actual intention to break or to tear an MCL or ACL. So I don't know. I tend to give players the benefit of the doubt. So I'm not going to go into all that, but we're going to see what happens this week against the Packers. And honestly, I'm just looking for good quarterback play out of Jaron Hall. I'm excited to see him play again, and we'll see what happens. Win or lose, I mean, this is about what we expected from this season. And I mean, after a 1-4 start, or if you want to go even further, 0-3 start, to even be at this point where you're 7-8, by the time you got 2 weeks left, I mean, that's pretty good considering all the injuries we've had to go through to get there. So, I mean, overall, that's where I am. I don't really have anything else to say. I'm just glad our quarterbacks that are turnover machines, that are confirmed turnover machines, are benched, and we can finally start Jaron Hall and finish out the season and go get rest. With that, I'll leave it to Matt to break down his Seahawks performance.
Well, I'm going to go to the official. So basically, Derrick Henry had a way better game this week than last week, where last week I think he only had like 9 yards. Well, this week he had 88, and then they decided, yeah, we're just going to stop running and let Ryan Tannehill throw. Ryan Tannehill is a disaster right now. It was bad, especially that final drive. Way too close of a game. Basically, same score, same scenario. Gino had to come in, and after a shaky first half, he finally settled in. I think the rust finally was finally coming off, and he was able to bounce back in the second half, lead the team to two fourth quarter drives actually for touchdowns, and then get the game winning drive. DK had a amazing catch for the first touchdown, which DK has been playing really well these past few weeks, so it's great to see that. Kind of like Tyler, but not all these guys have season-ending injuries. Yesterday's injury list, we had like a third of the roster either limited or not practicing, which we do have a couple of veteran players that need that rest, like DK or not DK, Tyler Lockett, Bobby Wagner, some of them, Frank Clark being one of them. List kind of settled down today. Jamal Adams, who's been a very big question mark these past few weeks, where he did not play in either the Eagles or the Titans game, but he hasn't even been in the building for either game. So a lot of people have been questioning his future. Good to see him back at practice today with Devin Witherspoon, finally getting some of that backfield or some of that secondary back in for our starters. Love's been playing great as his other safety, but just knowing we have the full tandem of both of our top corners, because it was good for Tariq Woolen, where last Monday with the Eagles game, he was actually benched um, for most of the game, where he came out for like 1 to 2 series, but there had been issues with him not being physical or not actually like being fully committed to the game. And for the end of the game this week, where he tackled the wide receiver, or I forgot who caught the final ball for the Titans, backwards out of bounds, where the clock continued to run and end the game. Seeing him make that type of play, Pete Carroll is able to get his guys, especially these younger guys, even the veterans, who buy in, just be able to buy into the team, buy into the culture. So just having that type of play from him after getting benched last week is great to see. And hopefully, with Witherspoon back, we'll finally get to that tandem of not letting wide receivers just go run wild on us, because they line up on the other side of our one good cornerback, which the others are fine, just not at Witherspoon's level. So great to see him finally coming back. Um, 2 games left. We're back in the playoff picture after a bad slide middle of the year. So, Gino, glad to have him back. Still, it'll be more of a talk in the off season after everything's over. Do I feel like we need to move on from Geno Smith and find somebody who to be that franchise guy? Yes, but for this year, he's our guy. Drew Lock's the backup. We got to go with what we got, and hopefully we can push to the playoffs.
There you go. Sounds about right to me. Glad to see you guys back in there. I knew you guys would recover from the skid. I mean, you guys had a lot of tough opponents back to back. Um, so I mean, we're about the same way there. So if the Rams could, go ahead and drop a couple, that would really help. Assuming the Vikings and the Seahawks can win their games. Um, both of us can get in there still. There's still a possibility of it. It's a pretty long shot at this point, but 49 the Rams still have to play the 49ers, so that's going to be hopefully one loss the Rams can suffer, and maybe the Giants have enough power to upset them. I doubt it, but if the Vikings can win out and Seattle can win one of their next two, I think we can beat the Rams in terms of three-way tiebreakers.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll be the case there. Looking back at last week, I went 12-4. Very happy about those picks. And going down the list, most of which was what we predicted together. Most of the picks, like we predicted the Rams to beat the Saints. The Pittsburgh came as a surprise, but Mason Rudolph did a pretty good job filling in. So it's not a surprise that he's also going to get the start next week. Cincinnati just could not get into the end zone. Jake Browning was able to pass for a lot of yards, but if it doesn't end in points, that's not what you want. Chargers actually playing well without Brandon Staley and without Justin Herbert. Easton Stick, I believe, is his name.
Yeah, I believe
He's
so.
doing pretty well for them. They're keeping games a little bit close. So, and to be able to do it against Buffalo, who's red hot right now, that's pretty good for them. Atlanta was one of the upsets I had in mind. I think it was yours too. Atlanta played a really good game at home. Usually that's Desmond Ritter's thing, but Taylor Heineke apparently kept it going. We already talked about our games. The Jets had such a commanding lead and then decided to let Washington back in the game, so that was almost scary there for me as I picked the Jets. Green Bay barely squeaked out a win against the Carolina Panthers. If they made that field goal, that'd be overtime. And I don't even know who wins that overtime call. Bryce Young, that was his first game where he's actually looked like a first round draft pick.
I
And
think it's one of those things where, especially just with the situation because even with Adam Thielen, there's not a lot of veterans on that team. You still have a
right.
lot of young guys. Now they need to bring in veterans. You can't just keep trying to add youth, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Um, I'd say it's almost like an Atlanta situation where you just keep trying to shove youth in there. It's not going to work. You need to get
Yeah.
veteran players in there, but
To
they're
be fair,
finally
that's also
gelling
what Green
together.
Bay's done a lot too.
But you'd also still have the veterans, like you had Devonte Adams, you had some veterans on the defense, veterans on the offense. But like Carolina, you never see any veterans going except like Adam Thielen, but that's really the only one I can think about. A lot of them are guys they just draft and try to build on, but without the veterans to kind of like mentor them, and they haven't really had a stable coaching staff either for how many years now. Um, so seeing them finally gel and actually push a couple wins out at the end of the season, I do feel like Carolina has their guy.
Mm.
It's just difficult when you don't have a first round pick to come off a year where you still need a lot of pieces. Like if they could bring in Marvin Harrison, that would be a great pickup for them to have a young, youthful wide receiver to bring in, have Adam Thielen kind of mentor and build on for the future
Yeah.
to have a main guy to be that number one wide receiver like a DJ Moore for
And
uh
with their record, they're
Bryce
sure
Young.
to get that first overall. Oh, wait a minute. Nope. They traded it to the Bears.
Because what would be great now, it would be hard to have this scenario because they wouldn't have Bryce Young. Maybe.
Mhm.
I don't know. But for Carolina, because here's the thing, Caleb Williams is probably the number one quarterback in the draft coming up. Some
He's
could
moved
argue
down,
Drake May
actually.
or
I don't know
JD
if that's, I think Drake
Daniels.
May.
You could toss those three around. Caleb Williams hasn't had the best year, but I still think he's the number one prospect. You
Caleb
could try
Williams'
it.
backup just went in this week and threw for the same record he previously held. So
That was also
it,
against Louisville, who lost to a third string backup in Florida State, who Florida, that's a whole different discussion.
it's
But
true, but it begs the question of the system. So, um,
though he was
but
also good in Oklahoma. So,
correct,
but it's
correct.
also one of those things where I haven't heard enough. Also, Drake May's had some bad moments this year, specifically NC State, Go State. uh,
Oh yeah,
one of those things where I just haven't heard or seen. Now, pro day, whatever, the combine could change some of those things. I still, just right now, I think Caleb Williams is still that top guy.
Mhm.
You could trade that piece back like what the Bears did last year, go back a pick or two where you know someone needs that quarterback and wants that quarterback and doesn't want to take the chance of having a quarterback fall to them, get some more pieces, bring in more guys in. Maybe
And with the
bring a good
importance
player
of
or two.
backup quarterbacks, what teams that have a high end draft pick are going to pass on a great quarterback if they fall? So that's another thing where it's like, you've got most teams have at least a competent backup within their roster here, or somebody that's going to come off of IR next season. So it's like with all those kind of floating around, even if they don't really need the quarterback, if they're only running off of a great backup or one good guy and their backup is not good, then there's not going to be
Because
many teams
this
that are going
year
to
has
pass on the
been the year
quarterback.
of the backups where you need a backup quarterback. You need somebody competent to win you a game, two games, three games, maybe even the rest of the season.
Hmm.
Somebody that, one, you don't have to change your whole offense for, and two, you can plug them in and you know they might not win the game for you, but they will not lose you the game.
Yeah.
You can win with them, not you're now completely hampered because there's a lot of teams this year, kind of like the Raiders, where we've seen them win a game or two, but they have not done anything this year because of their
Yep.
quarterback situation. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think you and me both agreed, isn't that guy. He was just in a
Yeah,
great system in
he's a
San
guy who's
Fran.
not going to lose you the game, but he's not going to do anything spectacular
And he's probably
or
going to get hurt in the fourth, fifth game.
exactly.
But it's like teams like Los Angeles, they probably needed a good backup. Um,
Mm.
Atlanta, they don't know what they're doing with quarterback. Tennessee, Will Levis came in and provided a spark, but it wasn't enough. Now that roster,
Same thing with Minnesota.
yeah,
Dobbs provided a spark, and then, well, I blame that more on our coach than Dobbs. I think Dobbs is good. He just turned him into a pocket passer, and that's not his game. But it's a conversation for another day.
and
But
we'll
yeah,
get to this later with the picks because we've already missed the Browns Jets game because we're recording this on Thursday night. But
yeah,
the game happening right now, think of if Joe Flacco was on that Jets team. Now, it's not the same defense, not the same offense. I get that.
mm-hmm.
But that veteran presence rather than Zach Wilson, who pisses his pants every time he's on the field,
Mm-hmm.
other than it's the Eagles for some reason, just because Jalen Hurts decided, yeah, I'm just going to go play like a derp this game. Um, but having Joe Flacco back there, just a veteran presence where he can see the field. And someone made up a good comment. I'll say this real quick before we get back into the games because there's one quarterback I still want to talk about, and that'll probably be by the end because I have a
Mm-hmm.
whole rant for this one. You probably know who I'm talking about. But someone made up a good point of for the past, say, 5, 6 years, especially since Lamar and Russell came in the league and played well, people are going after athleticism in
Mm-hmm.
quarterbacks, not you can read the field and make the correct plays.
Yep,
And that's the opposite of what Tom Brady was. Tom Brady
exactly.
was, I'm not going to make a stupid decision. I'm going to pick you apart, but I'm not going to be running around like a Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
And we've gotten away from that. But with this year, with the backups, where those backups aren't that athletic, now could be argued case to case, but most backups see the field, can read the defense, and they're not going to lose. They're not going to restart that. They're not going to win the game for you, but they can help you win. Whereas
Right.
some of these guys that are just relying on athleticism, which could be a whole thing with what is it, Anthony Richardson with the Colts, where he's more of an athletic guy, where we see what's his name with the Colts right now,
Uh, Gardner Minshew.
Gardner Minshew, where he's just reading the defense and making the good plays.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I mean that's something that's going to be probably a big part of 2024 is there's going to be a lot of teams who are going to make sure they've got two competent players at QB. Um, and I think that that's just going to be something that is going to change the league potentially. The draft is going to revolve around it. Potentially, it might impact where quarterbacks get drafted. I mean, if everybody's of that mindset, some teams might move up that you wouldn't expect because you're like, oh, they've got their guy, but they're moving up a couple spots to go get a QB. Why they go get a QB? And it's like, well, they don't want to risk being bad because they've got a quarterback injury. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens come the draft time, but we'll definitely get to that when it happens. It's only a couple months away. So without further ado, we'll continue down the list. Cleveland beat Houston, not a surprise. CJ Stroud was out again, but I think I picked the Browns either way. I think you did as well.
Yep.
And Joe Flacco has just been playing amazing football. That defense is very opportunistic and can get you pretty much any time. Um, Tampa Bay beat Jacksonville. I think both of us also called that one. Baker Mayfield is doing a great job. Both of us said at the beginning of this season that this is kind of like his last chance, his final audition. I think he just secured himself at least a job somewhere. If I don't see Tampa Bay not keeping him after this year, but if they let him go, somebody's picking him up. He's better than a lot of the guys who are currently playing. Granted, a lot of them are backups, but still, um, he's really putting it together as of late. Um, and then Chicago or Arizona at Chicago. Bears are probably like I said at the beginning of last week. The Bears are the best bad team in the league, in my opinion. Um, but I'm like, now they've even gotten themselves to where are they even a bad team anymore, or are they just mid because they're 6-8, I think, or 6-9?
I'd
something
actually
like
say
that.
Las Vegas is, but we'll get to them.
So I mean, I'd say they're a good team. I mean, they're one win away from being
500,
500. Well, it make them 500 next week, but I mean, I'd say they're a good team right now.
63
Um,
points last week, beat the Chiefs this week.
in Arrowhead, yeah, I mean, like I'd say they're a good team. So I think yeah, so I think the title of best bad team still goes to Chicago. Um, but I mean, I think that's just great for them. Miami ended up winning the battle of the teams who can't beat good teams. So we both knew somebody had to make it out of there. So um, not surprised that it was Miami, as it was not played in Arlington. So makes
accident
sense.
waiting to happen, Tyler.
Yep, that's the truth. Come playoff times, will Baker Mayfield be the one who knocks him off? That would be
Please,
very interesting.
for the meme.
Um, but and then Denver, honestly, and here's the thing, and this is probably where you're going to get into your rant, but I'll just say beforehand that in Denver's case, the whole media thing about Russell Wilson, I don't agree with a lot of what's being said out there, because if you watch that game back, Russell Wilson did not cost Denver that game. I've never seen a play where the returner fumbles the ball, picks
Twice.
it back up, runs 10 yards, and then at first contact fumbles it again to give it away to the other team. I've never seen a double fumble in that circumstance. So that's a 7 point swing automatically. And their defense is giving up 26 points to Bailey Zappi at home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at some point you got to just be like, guys, something's not right. And you lose Cortland Sutton in the first quarter and on like the first play.
And that's
So,
their 50-50 guy.
exactly. So, but anyway, so I mean, I'm not surprised about them losing the game. I'm surprised about the reaction to them losing the game being on Russ. And again, that's my thing of like, um I personally don't believe that the quarterback should shoulder so much blame as they typically do week in and week out. If the quarterback cost them the game, for instance, Nick Mullins throwing the pick at the end of the game and throwing multiple picks throughout the game, that's something where the quarterback needs to be like, "Hey, it's on me," instead of him saying, "I believe I'm a great quarterback. I'm amazing." Blah blah blah. Like he actually
Zach
said that in his
Wilson.
press conference. No, Nick Mullins said that in his press conference after throwing 4 interceptions. Um,
Oh, that okay.
so yeah. So it was like all the comments were like, bro did not just say that. Um but I believe like when the quarterback loses you the game, he doesn't have a good outing, throws a lot of picks, fumbles the ball a lot, like doesn't throw a lot of yards or anything. Like there's accountability to be had there. But when your defense is allowing a lot of points, your special teams gives the ball away, like those types of things is where the quarterback doesn't need to be taking blame. The team needs to be looked at as a whole, and I think that's where people think that the quarterback is the end all be all. We've seen in San Francisco, Brock Purdy. Technically, a lot of people are saying he got exposed Monday night, and to a certain extent, people may be right, people may be wrong. Personally, I think it's one game. I've got to see more, but with San Francisco's roster, we've both been adamant about the fact that pretty much anybody who plays the quarterback position could go in there and do a serviceable job at worst. So I believe it's a team sport, and when it's the quarterback's fault, they need to take accountability. When it's the team's fault, people need to lay off a little bit. But I'll let you get into this.
I'm
This
going
is
to
who you're
save
ready
mine
for,
for
right?
the end because I'm going to get heated and I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back down to earth.
Okay, well then
So, yeah,
we'll just not get into it then. Did I say it in a nice enough way for you?
we'll get there. Just let's move on.
Okay. Um, Las Vegas upsetting Kansas City. I believe Aiden O'Connell threw for 62 yards. So in that game.
Didn't get
So
a
if that tells
single
you anything,
offensive touchdown.
no offensive touchdowns, 62 yards passing by the quarterback. Oh
I
man.
think he was 0 for 10 in the last three quarters.
Probably. He didn't have to do anything. 7 seconds between the two defensive scores for Las Vegas. Um, that Kansas City, they got stuff to figure out, and they've got to figure it out quickly. I know they typically don't do well in the regular season and just seem to turn on another knob for the postseason, but this is worse than I've ever seen it
The
for
first
them.
time Patrick Mahomes will probably have to go on the road for the playoffs.
Probably. I mean, well, if they win.
Fair.
I mean, Denver's not taking the division away. Raiders have a shot in the dark at it. I think Kansas City has to lose out, and the Raiders have to win out, and the Raiders might take the division.
If
But
Kansas City loses out in either Denver or the Raiders win out, they take the division.
right, gotcha. Well, yeah, because I mean, out of the teams, if they'll probably end up being the 4 seed. I don't see them beating Cleveland,
No,
so they might
especially that
lose.
defense.
They might lose in Arrowhead in the wild card.
That would be hilarious.
Because honestly, that's probably the first matchup is what I'd see there. We might get to see Flacco play the Ravens in the divisional.
Or
So
if I don't see the Ravens collapsing, but if Cleveland wins out and Baltimore loses out, it'd be Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson,
mhm.
which that would be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. You wouldn't guarantee Mahomes because the 4 seed, the 1 seed, it's tough to see who else wins between those matches because I think he'd still have. Let's see, because the Dolphins would be the 2 or the 3 seed, and then who's the other? The Jaguar. The South is going to be a toss up too. So I don't that's going to be interesting. So there's a path to have Flacco play the Ravens, but
But we're
we'll
still
see.
far from that.
Exactly. And then Philadelphia almost gave it away against the Giants at the end, but great offensive performances by both teams. I think you're seeing a lot more, especially from AJ Brown, not talking to the media because he doesn't have anything nice to say. Like the coordinators for the Eagles just have not been good
No.
this year. They lost both their coordinators in the offseason, and they're showing the signs like we talked about earlier. Like it is possible for them to win now. We just saw it last week, but like they're not doing things correctly. Their play calling has been very suspect, and I think that when they get to the playoffs, after the wild card match against likely the Seahawks or the Vikings, depending on what happens. Because personally, I think the Rams are probably going to keep the 6 seed, but if things work out the way we want it to, it'll be my Vikings probably traveling to Philadelphia. Well, no, wait, because it'll be the 3 seeds. No, it will be the Seahawks or the Rams. I don't know who wins that match. I mean, the Philly home field advantage is pretty good, but I don't know how that
Carroll is
works.
undefeated.
Exactly. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes up when we get to it. And then Baltimore, we got that upset pick correct. In picking Baltimore over San Francisco, and that was not a good looking game by Purdy. And I had completely forgotten that he was in the MVP race.
Not
Um,
anymore.
but to me, I mean, I don't even think it's got to be Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill. Those are the two leaders who are not quarterbacks. But if you're talking about quarterbacks, I mean, there's interesting takes out there for who the MVP should be. But I mean, looking at it now, you've got to kind of look at like, okay, Lamar Jackson has won a lot of games, but in terms of like the importance to their team, there's really only Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen
Well,
in
no, hold on,
terms
whoa,
of
whoa,
like.
whoa, Tyler. We've seen Lamar Jackson not be a part of the Ravens team, and they've sucked.
Absolutely, but the thing is, you got to take into account the MVPs the past couple of years. There's a NFL announcer who was talking about. Oh no, it was Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman was talking was battling with who's Keyshawn Johnson? Is that who's on
Might be. I don't know.
Undisputed now? He was telling Keyshawn because Keyshawn was making an argument why Lamar Jackson should be MVP, and Marshawn Lynch is like, no, Marshawn Lynch. What the hell am I saying? Richard Sherman was saying, no, you look at the stats of the years prior. You know, both years Rodgers won MVP. It was like 80% of the team's touchdowns. Last year with Mahomes, he was 83%. Whatever, like Lamar Jackson back when he won MVP he was like 78%, something like crazy high percentages, right? And most of the time, the quarterbacks who win MVP lead the league in one or two categories. Lamar's middle of the pack in most of them, top 10 in some. And so, and he accounts for like 54, something like that. I can't remember what the exact number was, but it's not up there. Josh Allen is like 87% of his team's touchdowns. And Jalen Hurts is probably somewhere around that 75-80 mark. Where's where I would
So
guess.
it's also the MVP is definitely a story driven media type thing.
Yep.
And we've heard issues with Jalen Hurts. We've heard issues with Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the one person we haven't heard issues about yet?
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
But I mean, the most valuable player has got to be the one that. And then it's media driven. I'm not going to get into it because then I'm going to get all up, like you were about Denver. So we don't have to get into it. I just think that Brock Purdy should have never been in the running, but that's not a knock on Brock Purdy. That's just he's a 49ers quarterback. If you're a 49ers quarterback, you're going to do well. So that's not an MVP conversation. Plus, Christian McCaffrey's doing everything. So personally, I don't know how a non QB doesn't. If a non QB doesn't win it this year, they've got to be waiting for somebody to break Calvin Johnson's record.
Probably.
Or even then, if they don't do it, then it's just it's going. They might as well just change it to most valuable passer. And
I
just
will
move
say
on.
one thing that I think you and me will agree on. Patrick Mahomes is a crybaby.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I
Bro gets
agree.
through one bit of difficulty. Bro looking like Cam Newton out there right now.
All
Like
right.
it's
Well,
been bad.
are we doing the picks this video?
Let's do it.
All right. We're gonna move on to the picks. We'll hopefully put a timestamp on there for you guys. As you can see, we are recording this Thursday night. So the Cleveland Jets game is already in motion. Both of us already did pick Cleveland earlier this week, and that is looking very good for us as they are currently up 34-20 with 9 minutes left.
37
So
to 20 now. They just got a field goal.
I did not I'm on the picks page that did not refresh as fast. So even better. So that pick looks good for us. Going down the list, you got the Detroit Lions going to Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys on a little bit of a losing skate because they've been on the road a little bit. I see them bouncing back now that they're at home where they're undefeated. They're currently 7-0. That Detroit team against Nick Mullins and the Vikings looked very vulnerable on defense. And I think that Dallas Cowboys have a much better offense than the Vikings do. And as well as their defense can actually make more plays than the Vikings can, I believe. So I see the Cowboys getting a win there.
I've seen a very simple formula for how to beat the Cowboys now, and it's pretty easy. Run the ball. Who has
Yep.
two good running backs? The Lions.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a high scoring game, but I also feel like the Lions could control the time of possession enough where Dak is just stuck on the sidelines a lot of the time. So if they control the time of possession, it'll probably be a low scoring game. Or if they don't,
Hey
it'll
Matt.
just be a high scoring game and it's who hits 50 first.
Hey Matt.
Yeah.
You want to know how many rushing yards the Vikings had in the game against Detroit?
But
17. We ran the ball 9 times. We lost by 1 score. I don't think that's gonna happen. And we still put up 24. So
no,
I
I'm
think
saying
that.
the Lions run the ball.
Yeah, I know, but you said it could be a low scoring game if Detroit just runs the ball and keeps Dak on the sidelines. If Dak can score when he's there, then I don't think it matters.
but it's also we've seen Dak make mistakes and then not able to stay on the field.
I mean, it's true, but they're back at home. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I personally think it's an away thing, so
We'll see what
we'll
happens.
see. I mean, regardless, they're the accident waiting to happen. I just believe it's when they're on the road, and so they're going to lose the first time they go on the road in the playoffs. Is my personal opinion. Maybe not against the Bucks, but it
Go get
could.
them,
It could
Baker.
happen. So, all right. So you got the Lions there. I've got the Cowboys. We'll see if your solution for beating the Cowboys works with every team, or if the Cowboys are simply a home team driven team there. New England taking on Buffalo. It's nice to try and pick upsets every once in a while, but I'm not picking against Buffalo in this instance. It's at home at Buffalo. Last year, Buffalo put up like 40 something on them. So I'm rolling with Buffalo.
New England needs to get their tank back on the road. They'll do it this week.
Yeah. Falcons traveling to Chicago. Listen, the best bad team, man. Give it to them again. Chicago Bears.
Sam, they
Their
looked good
defense has
last
been
week.
scrappy.
They
Hmm?
looked good last week. The Falcons are on the road, so yeah, going with the Bears.
All righty. This is what. All right. So, other than the Miami Baltimore game, this will likely be one of the games of the week, at least in my opinion. The Raiders traveling to the Colts, two teams on backup quarterbacks, but two teams who have been doing much better than expectations this season. Um, and the Antonio Pierce story, man, that is just I love it. And you know what? I'm gonna keep adding to it. Raiders get the win on the road.
I'm going with the Colts. Usually they're on off, on off. They were off last week, so they'll be back to it this week.
There we go. I mean, hey, both great stories for both those teams. So whoever wins, it don't
Also, I
really
don't
matter
think
too much. But
Sorry. I don't
there you
think
go.
Gardner Minshew is going to be doing trick plays, so they won't get the first 7 points off the touchdown.
There you go. But their secondary is also not where Kansas City is. So I don't know. We'll see. It like I said, it's a coin flip. I mean, the voting so far is 51-49 in favor of the Colts. So the nation is pretty divided on it as well. But moving on, we've got the Rams taking on the Giants. I've got the Rams picking that one. I hope the Giants win. I'm going to be rooting for um what are they called? Because it's gangrene for the Jets. What's the phrase for the Giants?
I have no clue.
Whatever it is. All right, doesn't matter. Um, I'm rooting for the Giants, but I think the Rams are going to win. They're the far and away better team.
I could see the Rams falling into a trap game here. Tyrod Taylor almost beat the Eagles last week, and I feel like the Eagles are a little bit of a better team than the Rams right now. So I could see the Rams going to the Giants, falling into a trap game, not being able to get themselves out of it. This is more of me just going for hope and a prayer just to get the Rams out of there. I'm going with the
Mm.
Giants.
All right, there you go. I hope your prayers answered, man. I really do. You got the Cardinals traveling to Philadelphia. Philadelphia just raised a lot of question marks with that game. And after that, you got to keep getting right. I think the Cardinals provides a great opportunity for them to keep doing that. So maybe they'll figure out some of the coordination problems against the Cardinals. But regardless, I think they're in danger of choking in the playoffs, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
I think they'll pick up the win against the Cardinals here.
There was a time that people thought that when Kyler Murray would get back, the Cardinals could be a better team. The team still just sucks, man. Eagles are gonna probably pull this one out. It'll probably be by the skin of their teeth again, but they'll pull this one out.
There you go. All right. We have the potential for the Buccaneers to win the division this week if the Falcons and they if they beat the Saints and the Falcons lose to the Bears. I believe the 49ers they would clinch mathematically, but I think that even if they beat the Saints, I think they would also hold the tiebreaker over Atlanta. I could be wrong, but anyway, Tampa Bay could win the division this week. I think they'll be on the path to doing that. The Saints haven't showed me too much recently. And the Bucks have been on fire, so give me the Bucks.
Buccaneers coming off a shorter week than the Saints. I'm going with the Saints in this one just because they kept it close with the Rams last week. Um, these games have been basically a coin flip, and I see this happening again where the Saints pull this one off. We're not going to figure out this division until week 17 or week 18.
Yeah, and that's more likely. So that makes me think that Atlanta's probably going to beat the Bears now, um, but I don't know. I don't see Tampa Bay losing this game, but maybe they will. At this point, I don't question anything anymore. I just make the picks and move on. Um, 49ers at Washington. The only reason I would pick Washington is if there was a streak to break. There's not a streak to break except for their one game losing streak. So I guess the 49ers will break that by getting the victory over Washington.
How many games have the Commanders lost in a row?
I don't know.
I don't care to find out. I'm just going with the 49ers. They're the far better team. I don't think that's an argument.
Just gonna
And
say, yeah.
there's no
The Jets
real
put up 30 on them. I don't think that's the same defense as the Ravens.
because Purdy's probably going to throw for 400, 4 touchdowns. Debo
Yeah,
and Ayuk are
McCaffrey
probably
will
going to go
run for
for
another two or three more.
yeah. Debo and Ayuk are going to go for 200 yards. Kyle Shanahan's going to be in his bag this game to pull out a rebound game for the team because they really needed it after the punch. They were made a punching bag last week by the Ravens, so
Mm,
they'll make the Commanders theirs.
yep. All right, moving on. We've got the Panthers taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is interesting. I have, I'm so hesitant on picking the upset here, but I'm actually going to pick the Jaguars because this comes at the perfect time for the Jaguars. They've been losing so many games. I think they're on CJ Beathard now because I think Trevor Lawrence is done for the season.
Is he?
Or he might be, or maybe it's just this game because he had a concussion, then he's got like a shoulder. Like there's something wrong with him, right?
Was listed as a non-participant in practice Thursday.
Yeah, I don't think he's playing this week, but even so, I don't think they're going to lose to Carolina. I think CJ Beathard's good enough against Carolina because who they play last week? They played Tampa Bay. Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, I think they're good enough to beat the Panthers. That defense isn't going to allow them to walk all over them like Green Bay's did. So I think the Jaguars should win this game. This should be good to get right. Let Trevor have some time to heal while still getting the win. But that's going to be that division might come down to the end as well with the Texans and the Colts. So,
If
but
Trevor, my decision on this game will come down to Sunday morning, depending on Trevor Lawrence plays or not. If Trevor Lawrence is not playing, I don't think they will pull it off. They have looked bad even with a hurt Trevor Lawrence. I don't see a CJ Beathard pulling this game out after we've seen this Panthers team not really pull off wins, but it's been very competitive games where missing a Trevor Lawrence might be a game where you fall into this trap game and basically blow to the division most likely.
yeah, I mean, I might also check the weather too, how it's going to be in
Is it
Duval,
raining?
yeah, because I mean, again, other than the game they beat the Falcons, I haven't really seen them close out a game. I forget who their other win was against, but um, I haven't seen them close.
And Trevor
So,
Lawrence is he's allergic to the rain. That's all I gotta say on that one.
right. I mean, well, no, I mean, even not because the rain would help the Panthers because they that's the last time I remember them winning. Um, but I don't
The
know. I don't.
monsoon.
That defense is a lot better than Green Bay's, so I don't see them being able to put up enough points. I think CJ Beathard could probably put up 17 points, and if ETN does some of that, that's fine. If they put up 17, I think they beat Carolina. Um, but I don't know. I'm gonna roll with Jacksonville. I feel like the Panthers could do it, but I'm not gonna pick them, but this is one that I'm just alerting the public and you of that. I will not be surprised at all if Carolina wins. Um, moving on, we've got what should be the game of the week
Why is
in
this 1 o'clock?
Miami taking
What
on
the hell, guys?
Baltimore. Yeah, I mean, well, you're getting to the point where this is the last Thursday game. There's no more Monday night games.
Well,
So,
just put this to the 425 slot.
yeah, make it an extra one because there's only three. Like, I mean, yeah, why there's got to be so many 1 p.m. games. Anyway, this should be the game of the week. This should decide the first seed in the AFC. I see it going to the Ravens.
If
The
Jalen
Ravens have been
Waddle
playing
was
great
healthy
football.
and if Jalen Waddle was healthy in this game, I might have gone for Miami. But the Ravens defense looks really good against Purdy and that
Mhm.
offense last week. I just have to go with the Ravens. They're red hot. They're playing their best ball at the right time right now.
Yeah, Waddle may still play, and even if he wasn't even concerned, I would still pick the Ravens. First of all, Ravens, like you said, have been playing much better football. The Dolphins' only good team they've beat are technically the Bills now because the Bills are now a good team, but back when Miami beat them, they weren't. And now the Cowboys, which the other version of the Dolphins. So I don't think
Waddle
they're able to beat Baltimore. And Baltimore's home record is amazing as well. They play their best ball at home. So plus
Waddle
that
isn't
defense is
expected to
clicking.
play Sunday against the Ravens,
Gotcha.
so he's out.
So right. Well, I'm yeah, but I mean, even if he was in, I'm picking the Ravens. Um, but yeah, that should be a good game. Or not. The Ravens might have it wrapped up by halftime.
Yeah,
I don't know. Um, we'll have to see what happens because we expected Baltimore 49ers to be a potentially good game. But yeah. Moving on, we've got a divisional matchup and the Titans taking on the Texans. CJ Stroud is back, and even without him, I think the Texans would still win. But with him is even more of a so reason to pick him. So give me the Texans.
I agree. We can move on.
All right, next. We'll skip that for now. Next is the Chargers taking on Denver. Denver just lost to the Patriots. They've got a lot of mistakes to fix on the defense and special teams. The Chargers have been playing very well actually after Brandon Staley, and they'll probably want to have the chance to knock their divisional rival out of the playoffs. Give me the Chargers.
This game's at home. I think for one
So
week,
was it
just
wasn't last week's at home too?
yeah. But this game's at home. Chargers are on the road. Um, I just feel like it's one of those things where they don't have tape on Jared Stidham in this offense. Um, I just feel like this is one of those games that Easton Stick might have a couple turnovers. The Broncos defense is still pretty good at getting turnovers. Um, I just feel like they'll pull this one out.
There you go. Um, all right. Next, you got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on Kansas City Chiefs. All right. Well, I'm gonna make an announcement. This is the last time I'm picking the Chiefs. If they lose, this is the last time. That's what I meant to say. If they lose this game, this is the last time I'm picking the Chiefs to win. No matter, I don't care. Raiders, Broncos, Chargers. I think it's either the Raiders or the Chargers. They play next week, and then whoever they play in the playoffs. If they lose, I'm not picking them anymore. But I'm gonna pick the Chiefs to win this game. That secondary is still pretty good. Um, I think they're gonna try and figure it out. They don't like the Bengals. That's become a new rivalry as of late. Even without Joe Burrow, they're gonna want to have that heated up. Jamar Chase just fed some fuel to the fire by saying what's special about the Kansas City secondary? Nothing. So of course his trash talking is probably gonna come back to bite him in the butt because Kansas City actually does have a good secondary this year. So I think they're gonna take it back. And Jake Browning, honestly, he's been bailed out by arm punts a lot this season. And I don't think that's going to happen against the Chiefs. I think they're going to take advantage of his arm punts. So give me the Chiefs to turn it around. But wouldn't be too surprised if the Bengals win, I guess. But I think that'll actually be more offense filled than the Raiders game. But I don't know. I feel weird about that game.
Chiefs just lost to a team that their quarterback threw for 62 yards, went 9 of
Mhm.
21.
Yep.
This is not a good Chiefs team. I feel like we're going to see that again Sunday. I'm going with the Bengals. The Chiefs are falling apart at the worst time, and I've heard for now that we're going to week 17 weeks now that they will fix it. There'll be adjustments. They'll get it right. When?
Mm.
I don't
I
see it.
I don't know. All I know is the Bengals defense is not as good as the Raiders, and Jake Browning will serve up the meatball. So
Though Patrick Mahomes might do the same thing.
he very well might. But I don't think they get as cute as they were trying to be against the Raiders in this game after what happened last week. So we'll see what happens. Bengals have had a lot of linebacker injuries too throughout the season, so I don't that could be opportunity for Kelsey's breakout game. So something to watch out for, I guess there. But yeah, I'm not surprised if that goes either way. It's the last time picking the Chiefs if they lose, but I mean,
They
again,
play the Chargers next week, just letting you know.
yeah, I mean, I'll if they lose, I'll pick the Chargers. You can hold me to that. I
Oh.
I
Well,
don't
I was just
care.
letting you know. I went ahead and
So
looked.
right, yeah, I got you. But yeah, I mean, I believe with the playoffs on the line, technically, and I mean, it's against Bengals. It's in Arrowhead. I don't know if they're going to drop two in a row in Arrowhead and against technically both division rivals. Um, I think they'll be able to turn it around. So they could at least even the turnovers. I think they'll be able to take it out. Moving on, going back up a couple spots, you got the Steelers taking on the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks coming off a win off of the Tennessee Titans, just barely.
And Tyler, Merry Christmas, buddy, because you're going to be getting your playoff spot back this week.
You're picking the Steelers?
Yes.
I'm picking the Seahawks.
The defense has not looked well at all. Literally against a team that we knew they were just going to run the ball. They were going for 9, 10 yards. Derrick Henry was just going off. I don't know why they stopped, but I don't think Mike Tomlin's going to be somebody who just lets up on a weakness. Pittsburgh has two good running backs.
Mm.
That defense is a lot better than both of the defenses that we played the past 2 weeks. I see this being a trap game where we're looking to next week to get in the playoffs, and we're going to fall in this one.
I I see it all the other way. Maybe it's because I'm looking from a non-biased perspective, but I mean I see it as your secondary has both your top corners back in the game. Steelers went off against the Cincinnati Bengals, who do not have a top defense or even a top corner duo for that matter. Um, and I see that as George Pickens gets shut down. Um, Whoever else is on the Steelers gets shut down, and Mason Rudolph has a bad game. Obviously, with him, his last name being Rudolph is probably just a holiday story. For the script writers. So I don't know. I don't, and the defense. ah, I mean, the Bengals do have an offense, but like I said, Jake Browning can cough up the ball. I don't think you guys are going to do that as much. So
I threw you a
I don't
total
know.
curveball with this pick, didn't I?
You did, yeah. I mean, I'm sticking with the Seahawks. I'm gonna pick them. So I mean, that way I'll at least help you out too. So that way if your team loses, you'll at least get the pick right and you'll get the win over me from the head to head there. But I don't know. I see it all the opposite way. I think being played in Seattle as well should be a lot better. I think you guys traveling to Tennessee was tougher just because it was a different environment and they busted out some trick plays for you guys. I don't see them doing. I don't see the Steelers doing the same thing. But hey, I could be wrong. But the Steelers have confused me all season. So
Steelers going to
it's
Super Bowl.
it's all yeah, it's all whatever. All right. Um, Green Bay at Minnesota. Pretty much whoever loses this game is eliminated from playoff contention. Granted, the Vikings would have an outside chance if they lose. Because I believe the problem is Green Bay's conference record is not as good as Minnesota's. So if Green Bay loses, they would need both the Rams and the Seahawks to lose as well, or else they're done for.
Well, no, I think
Um,
if Green Bay loses this game, it's automatic.
right. Yeah, I think that's correct. And then whereas if Minnesota loses, um,
You need the Rams or Seahawks to lose,
or the Packers next week.
or something like that. But I understand what you mean.
Yeah, so like I said, I think there's still a small like 5% chance or some crap like that if the Vikings lose to make the playoffs. Whereas I believe I agree with you, the Packers are pretty much done if they lose this week. Um, yeah, we're finally making the rookie quarterback change that I want. I don't we're just so beat up to crap that I just don't even know anymore. The Packers offense is clicking. Our defense is on a downturn. I don't like those trends. Um, I mean, I don't even know if Addison plays. We just lost Hawkinson too, so I don't know. I'm gonna just take the Packers because they're less injured at this point, and um, I mean, I don't know. At some point, we've got to be too injured to carry on. But I really hope we win. I'm just not gonna get my hopes up too much. And also we're playing a rookie. He could end up being like our other two guys and turn the ball over a ton of times. I'm not expecting anything with him, so I want to be clear that I'm not expecting anything out of Jaron Hall. I'm not, my expectations are not high. They're just like, hey, go play quarterback. That's all I want to see. Um, so whether he's good or bad, I don't really care. I just want to see him out there, and I'm glad it's happening. But to make it even more clear that I don't have any expectations, I'm going to pick the Packers and hope to be proven wrong.
So,
Um, yeah,
is Justin Jefferson playing this week?
he is.
There's a thing I like to say I believe in karma.
Mhm.
Do you know what Green Bay did this week, Tyler?
Jair Alexander got suspended for a coin flip.
Going onto the field and almost messing up the coin flip like Dak Prescott did.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to bite them in the butt. I see Justin Jefferson having a pretty good game. Might not be like an elite game, might not be a historic game, but enough where it will cost Green Bay the chance to go to the playoffs just because they decided to bench a cornerback for going out on the field because his hometown was Charlotte
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to go be there for the coin flip.
Right. Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't even think that matters though, because Jair Alexander, uh, the whole time when there's the whole thing where it's like, oh, when Jair Alexander was covering Justin Jefferson was held to however many targets, however many catches. It's like, yeah, he's got two other safeties helping him out on every play. So I mean, I don't really know if it's Jair who does it. So um, I personally think they finally changed their coverage because the first game last year, you know, Justin Jefferson went off for like 200 yards and two touchdowns. Um, and it was just because they played zone coverage most of the time, and Justin Jefferson was able to find the spots in the zones. So, um, I mean, they didn't do that the next time they played us, and they they triple team Justin Jefferson every play, and Jair Alexander does the gritty on him. So I'm
Well, it's
like,
still Joe Barry, so he'll do stupid shit. Don't worry.
yeah, it's just like, but it's just like all the people saying like Jair Alexander owns Justin Jefferson is like, no, he doesn't. You got two safeties helping you. You can't. I don't get it. So I don't know. I feel like it's a lose lose for Minnesota in that reason as well too, because like if Justin Jefferson does well, it's like, oh, it's because Jair Alexander wasn't playing. So I don't really know. Um, but I'm still gonna take the less injured team, and just because I don't expect anything out of my team anymore. I've learned to not expect things. So if I mean I've been picking against my team most this season anyway. After all the turnovers and all the injuries, I just at this point I'm just whelmed. I can't really do anything else at this point. I just have to have no expectations. That way, the only thing that can happen is I can be pleasantly surprised. So just know that if I ever pick the Vikings to win a game again this season, it's either because Detroit chooses to bench their starters next week for some reason, or I've completely lost my mind and it's not actually me, and you need to stop the podcast immediately and record it by yourself because I've lost my mind.
Okay, real quick. I know this episode's turned long, but I said I'd do this earlier, but I need to talk about Russell Wilson real quick, just because he was the quarterback. He was the quarterback I grew up with, as a NC State Wolfpack fan, and
Go Wolfpack.
with the Seattle Seahawks. Honestly, probably the first full game I've ever watched was Super Bowl 48 with Seattle versus the Broncos. Um, and I've been a Seattle fan ever since. You can call bandwagon whatever, but for the past few years of what I've dealt with, I think I can be an
No,
official fan now
when
without
you're
being
when
called
you're a
bandwagon.
kid and you haven't chosen a team yet, you get to root for whoever you want to root for, as long as you stick with them, which is what you've done. So
Yeah,
you're
but
good.
when Russell went over to Denver last year, it was a bit of a tough thing. Because like I've been a Seattle fan for almost a decade now. Um, and the quarterback I watched get traded was kind of like a thing that was just like, damn, I guess this is a thing. But I say with Russ, was still a Seattle fan on the side, but I'm more of a Russell Wilson fan than a Seattle fan. And seeing him, it wasn't a great year, and you could say the culture, whatever, the coaching, whatever. Honestly, I think you and me can both agree that Denver roster is not that great, and it's only gotten worse since last year.
Yeah.
Like Bradley Chubb gone, Randy Gregory cut, some other defensive players and O line gone now in free agency. And I think Sean Payton didn't come in thinking he was going to fix Russ. Now, if he fixed Russ and went to a Super Bowl or the playoffs, great. Add that on to his coaching career. But I think I'm not in the building, I'm not in his mind, so I can't say this officially, but just from the way it looks, he had a scapegoat if things didn't go right.
Hmm.
Things didn't go right. Oh, well, Russell Wilson just sucks. He's washed. I need my own guy. And Russell Wilson was good for so many years. Yes, the whole Super Bowl 49 with the pick in the end zone at the 1 yard line. But Pete Carroll's come out and said that he made that play. It wasn't Russell that audibled. It wasn't Russell saying, "Give me the damn ball." It was a better defensive play than the offensive play. Malcolm Butler made an amazing play. But for so many years, Russell was voted at the top of the league in quarterbacks. There was a whole thing about him getting his first MVP vote, and I know he never did, but for so many years, he was at the top of the league in passing, top of the league in touchdowns. Yes, he did throw some bad turnover or from some bad interceptions, but was never extreme on the interception numbers. And for so many years, he was near the top of the league, if not one of the top. Seattle went to the playoff for so many years until maybe the final year or two with him in Seattle, with the last year being the year that he injured his hand on Aaron Donald's helmet and he came back. He just wasn't the same. still because of the injury. And it's so frustrating to hear all these people on sports talk shows now saying, well, he's been washed. He's been horrible his whole career. No, he hasn't. It's statistically, no, I've heard everyone this year say, oh, well, stats lie. If you watch it, yes, he hasn't been great in the games. Yes, he's lost that step. But there's so many times I'm watching that wide receivers aren't getting open. They don't really have any great tight ends, where in Seattle, he had decent tight ends he threw to. Now, like, there was the whole Jimmy Graham experiment, and that didn't really go amazingly. But Russell Wilson likes throwing to his tight ends. He likes dinking and dunking sometimes when those big plays don't work. But those dink and dunks work sometimes because they come open when he's scrambling. Now, yes, you can say that he's lost step as he's gotten older, but that's okay. Not everyone is Tom Brady where they can just sit in the pocket, especially someone his size. But it's not something where he was washed his whole career just because of 1 to 2 bad years in Denver. And I've heard the whole this is the worst trade ever, blah blah blah. Yeah, let's not talk about the Trey Lance trade where he played what 2 games, Tyler?
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that one, which that gave Miami Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, and I forgot who that other player was, but it was a third player in that too. Um, but yeah, let's not talk about any of that. But it's not Russell Wilson's fault that he was given all this. Now, did he need a office to himself? No. Did he need his own parking spot? No. Did he need his own coaches and stuff there? No. But the organization gave that to him. And we go into this year where that defense gave up 70 points against the Miami Dolphins.
Yep.
I can go back to at least 1 to 2 of the games where that defense let him down. Russell hasn't been amazing this year, and yes, that contract he's not he's not making the level where that contract warrants. He's not being one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year, but he hasn't been terrible.
Right.
Other than the
They,
past
they
few
they they
games,
needed to keep their roster and make the trade, and they couldn't do that.
and I feel like it's one of those things where yes, was the trade bad? Yes. As a Seahawks fan now that I'm fully mostly back into Seattle while just rooting for Russ, it's been great for us. Detherin Witherspoon, when he's healthy, he's been great. Um, some of the other players like Noah Fant, Drew Lock won us the Eagles game. It's been great. But Russell Wilson didn't decide what Denver traded.
Mhm.
So it's frustrating, and I've been holding that on to all week, and you've seen my texts. It's frustrating, and I hope if
Yeah.
this is it for Russell, he can live well with his family. I know he probably has way more than enough money to get him the rest, but I hope honestly there's a part in me that wants him to come back to Seattle where Pete Carroll knows him. He knows the system. We still have around the same receiver. Like he has connections with DK and Tyler Lockett. They're his guys. I know it's not going to happen, but it's one of those gives you that warm feeling inside. Just because I feel like it'd be the good fit. Do I want this to be the end for us? No, because I love watching him play. Just the way he can be a magician in the pocket is amazing. Like, yeah, you'll have probably 75% of the game where you're just like pulling your hair out of Russ, what the hell are you doing? But then that 25%, those final 2 minutes on that game winning drive is the
Mhm.
most magical moments as a fan of what watching Russell Wilson.
Best 2-minute quarterback in history. Well,
And just the amount
maybe
of
not history, but I don't know.
well, yeah, but at least of the past few years, Russell's been one of those guys that whenever it's 2 minutes, you want a guy like Russ. You want a guy that can make magic in the pocket and outside the pocket, and when plays break down and you need a play, he can get it to you. And it sucks, and it's difficult to watch everyone try to tear down a guy who's had an amazing career. There's so many quarterbacks. Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Andrew Luck never won a Super Bowl, which that's a whole nother scenario. And I feel horrible for what happened with Andrew Luck, but like Philip Rivers never won a Super Bowl. So many guys never won Super Bowls. Russ did. You can't
Yep.
be horrible and win a Super Bowl. Yes, that defense was amazing. Was that one of the best defense of all time? Maybe. We can have that argument. But you can't get to a Super Bowl and win with a horrible quarterback. I'll just leave that there.
There you go. Good words, and I appreciate you stepping up for your quarterback. I mean, look at me just the other week when the Texans beat the Titans. I was, giving Case Keenum his credit because he was one who when I was growing up, getting into the Vikings fandom and everything, actually paying attention and looking at player stats and stuff. I was digging into Case Keenum during that 2017 run when he filled in for what's his face, Bradford.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, like a lot of my, start there, obviously I've been a Vikings fan my whole life, but when I really actually started digging into it was, was 2016, which we won 5 in a row, and then our defense just fell apart and we didn't make the playoffs. And then 2017 happens, and all of a sudden we're just knocking people around. And so I was really hoping we kept Case Keenum, and I really liked him. I liked that he took chances, but they were not too dangerous chances most of the time. They were, good balls to give the receiver a chance, and that's something that I hadn't seen recently, and I hadn't seen too much with Kirk Cousins until recently, and so it made me appreciate him even more. And so I'll always, whenever Case Keenum does well, I'll always praise him unless he goes to the Packers. I'll probably won't do that in that instance, but um, I always root for him, and I root for Adam Thielen, my favorite player in the NFL. I mean, it just sucks that my favorite player in the NFL is no longer on my team. Like that hurts, but just because he's on a different team that isn't the Packers doesn't mean I'm gonna give away, him being my favorite player. Like, no, I will admit that my favorite player is not on my team.
Yeah.
So, um, and that happens, and so I totally agree with your story. I relate to it heavily because I've experienced, you know, the same thing with one of my favorite players. I grew up watching and Adam Thielen going to another team, but like not in the sense of the whole trade and the scrutiny and everything. I don't think anybody's criticizing Adam Thielen over in Carolina. Um, but I totally get everything what you're saying, and I it just feeds back to my overall argument that QBs, it's a team sport. It is the most important position, but sometimes fans just need to be aware that there's 33 guys and more because rotational people out there who are making a difference. And there's also the coaches out there as well who are in charge of the play calls for all three phases of the game. So if you put everything on the quarterback, you're just wrong. Like I'm not even gonna explain that by having the number of people that's on a football team and all the coaches and there being three phases of the football, you should be smart enough to know that it's not all on the quarterback. He can't go out and play defense. He can't go out and call defense. He can't go call the special teams. Can't catch punts, run them back. Like no, he's not doing that. So you got to just be smart sometimes with this. And I think it's one of those situations where, yeah, I mean, nobody expected the Broncos to lose to the Patriots, one of the worst teams in football right now, but it's not on Russ. And Russ has not been playing bad ball this year. I get it. Last year was pretty bad, but I think that this year you started to see that okay, it wasn't a good marriage with Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson. Sometimes that happens. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, Vikings have had it a ton of times where we get a good coordinator from somewhere and he just turns to crap. We had it last year with Ed Donatel. Had been great with the Broncos for a while as a defensive coordinator, and then gets here and we're 31st ranked defense. It happens.
Yeah,
Sometimes the coach is not the right marriage for the players, and you
because
you
it
get
matters
past
on
it,
scheme, it matters
you
on the
move on.
personnel.
Exactly. So, like one of the reasons Brian Flores' defense works so well with our guys is because we have a lot of safeties with the build to be able to switch to linebacker. There's a graphic that showed up and forget which game it was. That Josh Metellus, one of our safeties, has lined up at 12 different positions on defense this season because he's able to play linebacker. He's able to blitz off an edge. He's able to be an edge rusher. Like he's got that build where he can play wherever you need him to be, and you can have kind of jokers on defense to kind of play wherever you need. And that's one of the reasons why Brian Flores has been able to turn this defense on, like literally on its heel. I think we're like what, one of the top 15 defenses, if not top 10 this year. Um, and we were 31st ranked, like I said, last year. So I mean, the personnel's better, the scheme's better, for Brian Flores than it was at Donatel's. So, um, you have to find the things that work. I mean, you go back to the Eagles, like I discussed earlier in the video. You know, their coordinators last year were amazing. They went to the Super Bowl and it looked like they were unbeatable. Then the Kansas City Chiefs called their ultimate card, the refs, to help them out. Um, Whereas, now they've got pretty much the same roster and two different coordinators, and they can't beat good teams, it seems like. So
Look at the
it's all
Chiefs
about
offense.
it's all about who's exactly. It's all about who's there. So sometimes things don't work out. You get past it, you move on. You just hope it doesn't take too long um to figure out. But yeah, it's one of the truths of life, and I think that it's definitely true for all teams, and every team experiences it at some point or another. But I think that's enough said there. This video has gone on way too long. Um, but glad we got some feelings out. That's what this podcast is about sometimes. We've got to vent our feelings. We've got to fans as a whole. I mean, we got a lot of things we'd like to talk about when you get deep into your team and into the league itself. I could have a whole video about the refs and how they need to be consistent in their calls and everything, but you know, nobody's really gonna want to listen to me rant about that. So, um there's a lot of passion to be had, and I think that's good. It's good to foster the conversation. It's good to have it. Um, and that's what we're here for. So if there's any of you that watch it to this length and finish the video and everything, please let us know like what you'd like us to discuss. If there's anything as far as rules or things been going on this season or certain players or teams that you want us to talk about more and name a team, name a topic, whatever you guys have in mind, and well, we'd love to talk about it for you guys. We're willing to bring up topics that other people may not be comfortable talking about. We'll bring it up. We'll address it as how we see fit, in a way that won't get us canceled, and we'll
Yeah,
do
as long
our
as it
best.
doesn't get us canceled, we're good.
Exactly. We'll address it the best we can. We'll do what we can as long as within our discussion between Matt and I. We'll do our best to discuss it, and we'll hopefully get some good opinions fostered out there and get some good discussion going. Because I mean, there's a lot of ways this league can be improved, but there's also a lot of things to celebrate about the league that we have the privilege of watching. So I think as long as we have a good balance of that out there, that's really all that matters. Because I mean, after all, we're all in this because we love the sport and we love to watch it. So I think just coming at it from that point in your hearts, that's all we need to be. Um, any other closing remarks, Matt?
To a great 2024 we go.
That's true. New year. Maybe that means well, no, no. All of our games are before. If we're not 20. I mean, for the podcast we are, but all the games are played before 2024. The Vikings Packers game is New Year's Eve.
Yeah, same with the Seahawks game.
Oh man. Well, yeah, but I mean, ours is actually like ours will be over at like 11 something, so we'll
It'll
be
be
less than an hour close
11:59
to
when
New
that
Year.
game ends.
It goes into overtime and goes
Yeah.
into the New Year. I wonder if that would be a thing, like um one of the few games in the league that's ever been played in 2 days at once or
That
something like
game
that. Like I
lasted
wonder how many
till the
times
new year.
that's happened. So that'd be interesting. But anyway,
Yeah.
hopefully we both get to a good hopefully we both get wins and come back next week still alive in the playoffs, but we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. Peace.